The air in the ancient hidden sanctuary was cold, damp and heavy with the scent of moss-covered stone and something else, something indefinable, like the faint echo of sacred songs long forgotten. A single, slender beam of moonlight, fractured by mist rising from an underground spring, illuminated a colossal, intricately carved stone altar that dominated the center of the chamber. Upon its surface, etched in symbols that predated any known language, was not the cross or chalice of later traditions, but a magnificent dragon coiled around a blossoming tree, its eyes radiating wisdom, its wings spread protectively over a chalice filled with what appeared to be pure light. Before this altar, a lone figure knelt, their silhouette stark against the shimmering mist, hands outstretched towards a swirling vortex of vapor that seemed to rise from the very earth itself. From the depths of this ethereal mist, a low, resonant hum began to emanate, a sound that vibrated not through the air, but through the very stones, a whisper from an age when the sacred and the primal were one. What secret, meticulously hidden within the mists of Avalon, reveals a time when the dragon was not a symbol of evil to be vanquished, but a sacred guardian of divine wisdom? And what profound shift in consciousness does the deliberate corruption of this ancient truth truly signify? What timeless mystery did this enigmatic scene conceal? And what profound revelation awaited the one who dared to look beyond the veils of religious doctrine, to remember the delicate threads of a forgotten sacredness? My name is Lyra, and the call to something beyond had been a persistent, almost haunting echo within my soul since my earliest memories. It wasn't a voice in the conventional sense, no audible sound, but a deep, undeniable resonance that pulled me towards the hidden currents of the world, towards the whispers of forgotten lore, towards the shimmering edges of reality where myth and history intertwined in ways that defied modern understanding. My journey began not in a grand cathedral or a scholarly institution, but in the quiet solitude of my own mind, in recurring dreams of verdant, mist-shrouded islands where ancient priestesses moved with profound grace, tending sacred fires and communing with magnificent, benevolent dragons whose presence radiated peace and wisdom rather than terror. These visions were always accompanied by a profound sense of loss, a deep knowing that something essential had been deliberately erased, rewritten, twisted into its opposite. It was in an old, forgotten archive, hidden beneath the ruins of what had once been a monastery on a windswept coastal hill, its existence known only to a select few seekers, that I stumbled upon a tattered, water-stained manuscript. Its pages, brittle with age and smelling of salt air and ancient parchment, spoke of Avalon, not as the mere burial place of a legendary king, but as a sacred sanctuary, a living temple where the secret of the dragon was preserved. The manuscript hinted that in this ancient time, before the rise of patriarchal religions, the dragon was revered as holy, a symbol of the earth's wisdom, of transformation, of the kundalini fire that awakens consciousness, of the divine feminine principle itself. It spoke of priestesses who walked in harmony with these beings, guardians of sacred knowledge and healers of the land. This archive, with its scent of aged vellum and salt-laden winds, its scattered scrolls that seemed to pulse with suppressed truth, became my first sacred setting, a silent sanctuary where the seeds of my true quest were sown, where the whispers of my visions began to take tangible form, urging me to seek the truth of this ancient, deliberately obscured sacredness. The path unveiled by these fragmented manuscripts and my recurring visions was not one of easy discovery, nor a comfortable intellectual exercise, but a profound journey of unlearning and arduous self-confrontation, a spiraling descent into the depths of collective amnesia and personal conditioning. Each symbol deciphered, each cryptic verse pondered, each meditation undertaken in sacred spaces brought a new layer of internal resistance to the surface, challenging everything I had been taught about good and evil, sacred and profane, divine and demonic. There was the gnawing doubt that whispered of heresy and blasphemy, of chasing dangerous fantasies that contradicted centuries of established doctrine, abandoning the solid ground of accepted faith for perilous illusions. There was the profound fear of being cast out, of severing ties with familiar spiritual communities, of stepping into an abyss where no authority could validate my search. And there was the terror of confronting revelations that might shatter my understanding of religious history itself, leaving me without the comforting narratives I had grown up with. External resistances manifested in unexpected ways, not always as direct opposition, but as subtle discouragements and warnings. Conversations with traditional scholars who dismiss the dragon traditions as pagan superstition, encounters with those who insisted that any pre-Christian symbolism was inherently dark, moments of profound isolation where even fellow seekers seemed unable to grasp the significance of what I was uncovering. There were also encounters with others, rare kindred spirits, members of what they called the Keepers of Avalon's memory, who spoke in careful, coded language, testing my readiness, pushing me to look beyond surface interpretations. I remember one such encounter vividly, in a garden overlooking the sea, where an elderly woman with silver hair and eyes the color of storm clouds said simply, "The dragon, dear child, was never evil. It was made so by those who feared the power it represented. Are you willing to see what was deliberately hidden, even if it means standing alone?" Her words resonated in the deepest chambers of my heart, forcing me to confront my own indoctrination, my fear of spiritual authority, my need for external validation. I learned that powerful institutional forces throughout history had systematically demonized the dragon, transforming it from a sacred symbol of wisdom and earth power into a monster to be slain, a representation of Satan himself. I understood that this deliberate inversion was not accidental, but a calculated effort to suppress the divine feminine, to sever humanity's connection to the earth, to centralize spiritual power in hierarchical, patriarchal structures. The journey demanded profound losses, the loss of my simplistic understanding of religious history, the loss of my comfortable place within traditional communities, the loss of certainty itself. Each loss, however, brought a deeper clarity, a sense of peeling away layers of imposed meaning to reveal something far more ancient and true. The climax arrived not in a grand temple or during an elaborate ceremony, but in a hidden grove on what local legends still called the Isle of Avalon, a place where the veil between worlds felt thin, where ancient energies still pulsed beneath Christian overlays. The air was charged with an almost electric presence, carrying the scent of apple blossoms and wet earth, and the evening mist rose from the sacred springs, casting everything in an otherworldly luminous haze. In the center of this grove stood an ancient gnarled oak, its roots disappearing into the earth like the coils of some vast serpent. As I approached, following an inner prompting I could no longer resist, I placed my hands upon its rough bark. The moment my skin touched the tree, a wave of pure incandescent vision flooded my consciousness, not from an external source, but erupting from within the depths of my own awakened memory. It was then that the truth, the profound revelation of the secret of Avalon, when the dragon was still holy, surged through me with the force of a tidal wave, not as intellectual knowledge, but as direct cellular remembering. I saw Avalon not as a mythical fantasy, but as a living reality, a sacred sanctuary that existed in a time before the Great Forgetting. I witnessed priestesses in flowing robes the color of twilight, moving in sacred procession, their voices raised in harmonies that seemed to make the very air shimmer. And beside them, around them, above them, flew dragons of magnificent beauty, beings of pure consciousness and ancient wisdom, their scales shimmering with all the colors of creation. These were not beasts to be feared, but beloved companions, teachers, guardians of the threshold between the physical and spiritual realms. The dragons were holy because they embodied the sacred union of earth and sky, matter and spirit, the transformative fire that burned away illusion and ignorance. They were intimately connected to the goddess, to Sophia, to the divine feminine principle that had been systematically erased and demonized. The secret of Avalon was this: the true spirituality was not about dominion over nature, but harmony with it. Not about the suppression of the feminine and the earthly, but their sacred integration with the masculine and the celestial. The deliberate transformation of the dragon from holy guardian to demonic enemy was revealed as one of the greatest spiritual betrayals in human history. A symbolic genocide that mirrored and enabled the actual persecution of earth-based traditions, goddess worship, and the sacred feminine itself. The impact was overwhelming, shattering, and rebuilding my entire spiritual framework in a single, eternal moment. I wept, not from sorrow alone, but from the profound grief of remembering what had been lost, and the even more profound joy of recognizing that the truth had never truly died, only been hidden, waiting. The world I thought I knew dissolved, and in its place stood a far older, far more beautiful reality. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our content. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to know. The revelation, though profoundly illuminating and strangely healing, brought with it an immense quietude, a sacred solitude, born of seeing what few were yet ready to acknowledge. The world continued its familiar patterns, but I could no longer participate in its collective amnesia with the same innocence. I chose a period of deep contemplation, not fleeing from the world, but creating sacred space within it, seeking refuge in wild places where the old energies still whispered. I walked the ancient pathways, sat by sacred wells, meditated in stone circles that predated the empires that had tried to erase them. The natural world became my cathedral, the changing seasons my liturgy, the silence between heartbeats my scripture. I spoke in poetry and symbol to those few who could hear, knowing that direct proclamation would only harden the resistance of those still bound by doctrinal certainty. The dragon, I came to understand, was not merely a historical symbol that had been corrupted, but a living archetype that still dwelt in the collective unconscious, waiting to be reclaimed. Its demonization was a mirror of humanity's alienation from its own instinctual wisdom, its own creative fire, its own connection to the sacred earth. The silence I inhabited was not empty, but full of presences, of whispers from those who had guarded this truth through dark ages of persecution. I understood that Avalon had never truly vanished, but had withdrawn behind the mists, waiting for a time when humanity would be ready to remember. The ancient orders had preserved the secret not through books alone, but through bloodlines of memory, through artistic symbols hidden in plain sight, through the land itself. The dragon's holiness was encoded in Celtic knotwork, in alchemical texts, in the dreams of mystics who dared to look beyond orthodoxy. My time in this contemplative solitude transformed me utterly, burning away the last vestiges of the need for external spiritual authority. I emerged not as a teacher proclaiming a new doctrine, but as a witness to an ancient truth, understanding that my role was not to convince, but to remember aloud, to create space for others to remember in their own time. I knew that the story of Avalon, of the Holy Dragon, could not be forced upon a world still invested in its demonization. It had to be offered gently, encoded in story and symbol, accessible to those whose souls already carried the seed of remembering. My final act of service was not to write a manifesto, but to gather the fragments of this truth, to weave them into a tapestry of story and symbol, and to offer it to the world without attachment to whether it would be received. I created art, wrote poetry, composed songs that carried the resonance of that ancient time. I placed these offerings in unexpected places, knowing that those who needed to find them would be drawn by the same inner call that had drawn me. I understood that the ultimate truth could not be proven through argument or evidence, only recognized through resonance, only awakened through direct experience. And I knew that the revelation of Avalon's secret would unfold not through dramatic conversion, but through the quiet awakening of individual souls, one by one, until enough had remembered that the collective dream could shift, until the dragon could once again be recognized not as enemy, but as sacred ally, not as demon, but as divine. And as I stood one evening watching the sun set over the western waters, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, I could almost see them, just beyond the veil of ordinary perception, the dragons of Avalon, patient and eternal, waiting for the world to remember when they were still holy, when the earth itself was recognized as sacred, when wisdom wore wings of fire and scales of starlight, and humanity walked in balance with all creation. And if you liked this story, you will definitely love the next one that's appearing on your screen. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and activate the notifications. See you in the next one.